Hello, this is Paolo, and in this video we're gonna see the new features of Reality 4 and specifically how to navigate the Reality 4 interface from the point of view of a Reality 2 user. So if you are used to Reality 2 2.5, this is the video for you, because we're gonna see how things have evolved from the previous version to the new one. So the first thing we're going to see here is that the output tab is gone. Well, it seems to be gone. It's not gone. I just renamed it render. So the tab that was kind of in this area and called output has been changed to render. Output was a little bit technical, so render is more familiar, is more to the point. And because it's such an important part of the workflow, that tab is now in the front, not at the end, but at the beginning. So nothing traumatic at this point, and everything is in the familiar shape. Now, instead of having all the parameters, if you remember the old output tab, everything was visible at the same time. So instead of having those parameters all visible in one page as a long list of things to configure, now everything is grouped neatly in small groups. So we have the output itself, so basically the file, the image file, and the scene file, and all the other parameters that are pretty much the same. Some have been changed. Instead of calling alpha map, this parameter is being called now transparent background, because that's what it does. It's more to the point. It's we're getting things a little less technical and more friendly. So the output group, the scene configuration, the acceleration, all these things are basically opening up areas here that are visible only when you click on them instead of being always there. So most of the times we will be working with the output section here. And so that's it. That's the difference between output and render. No major changes here. There is a little more control, but you'll discover this through experimentation. The biggest change is in the materials tab. Now, in the past, the materials were listed in a flat list, and so if you had one figure, it was pretty simple to go through them. But if you had a very busy scene, like in this case, it was a little hard to find exactly which material was the target of our edits. So in this new arrangement, each object is separate, is grouping its own materials. So if I don't want to look at the door materials, I don't have to, I just leave them closed. Yeah. Instead, if I want to focus on the Genesis figures in this scene, I can simply open that group and then work on the materials for the face, for the body, etc., without having to try to find those materials in a very long flat list. But in case you do want to see all the materials at the same time, there is an expand all button that conveniently expands everything, and a collapse all that does the opposite function. The biggest change here is in the materials, in the parameters of the materials, how we work with textures and so on. So in the past, a texture was simply an image map. There is common parlance in the Poser or Studio world, but a texture, strictly speaking, is any pattern that is projected on a surface. So in the simplest case, a texture is a solid color. That is a pattern where every single point has exactly the same color, but there's still a texture. In Reality 4, we have a lot more textures than before. In fact, we have 12 or 14 textures where we had one before. So we're going to see some of those. This is just a quick overview of the program. I don't want to overwhelm you. But what is important now is that we understand the organization of the new materials. For the large part, they are very similar to what you knew before in Reality 2. The new materials have been expanded, greatly so, to make room for a new texture editor that is incredibly powerful and capable of creating very sophisticated materials without using the dreaded nodes. So you can create incredibly complex materials, but You don't have to deal with noodles and nodes and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll see how that works. So right now, the first surprise is we have a skin material, and it's delicious. It's a skin material that has automatic subsurface scattering. It's basically a single click to activate, and for most skin materials, there is no clicking to do at all. I call this the zero-click SSS because Reality automatically activates the SSS for any material that needs that feature. So in fact, if we look at good old Victoria 4, and this is just to show you the purple bikini basic texture, basic skin, it's very low quality skin. Well, even that one has now SSS, and let me tell you, Victoria 4 basic skin never looked this good. So, but let's go back to Genesis, which is the more modern figure. So here we have the skin material with great SSS. We're not going to look at that right now, but let's take a look at the materials here. Actually, the material parameters. So we have the diffuse channel as we had before. We have the specular as we had before. We have the glossiness that's been expanded. Now we have 2 values instead of 1, double the fun. And we have something called the Fresnel amount. Don't worry about that. A familiar surface fuzz. So these are all elements that you saw before. The difference is that instead of typing a file name for the image map or to click on the button, we have what is called a texture preview. So basically, this is the diffuse channel. This texture is of type image map, so Reality tells us what kind of texture this is. It tells us that this is a color texture. See the little color wheel here? Let me see. If we go to the modifiers, we'll see that this wheel is actually in grayscale, which tells us this is a numeric or grayscale texture. See the difference? This one is instead in color. And if I click on any part here of the texture preview, then the texture will be loaded in this other area of the screen called the texture editor. And we can see more details, or we can change it. We don't have to change it. We can just use the texture editor to investigate a little more. So let's click on this, and we see that the texture is loaded. It tells me that this is a texture type image map. But you see, we can have other texture types, and we'll see that in a moment. And I see a preview of the image. I see all the parameters here. I can change the gain. You see how the color, the brightness here is changing. Automatic preview. We didn't have anything like that before. We have other parameters. We have the tiling. Now the tiling in Reality 2 was only integer. Now it is using floating point values. So we have the offset and so on and so forth. So in any point, if I want to change this image map, I can click on the wheel, select a new file, and then I can change this to any kind of skin. Let's see, Brie had M. So which one is, now we have Brie, V5, Brie had M. And we can use this makeup, for example, okay. There you go. And we see immediately the preview. So lots of fun with textures. But let's say that I wanted to change this texture and I wanted to use a color mix instead of an image map. Well, here is where the power of the new textures comes in place. We can just say, hey, I'm going to use a color math. Don't let the word math scare you. It's very simple stuff. Consider this like a mixing of colors. So I click on color math. And Reality remembers that we had an image map here, so it doesn't lose information, it's still there, no? And so the texture preview has changed here. It's saying, hey, I'm using a color math texture here instead of an image map. and I have this image here mixed together with this color. Well, let's we can just change that, for example, and give it a little bluish tint. And look at the preview here, it will change. Well, actually, let's make it really blue to see the difference. Otherwise, it might be just too subtle to see it in the video, but then we'll correct it. So now we have the preview has changed and it looks like a zombie of some kind. And the preview has changed as well. So nothing too complex, but incredibly more powerful, incredibly more expanded, because we can create all kind of functions here. We can actually have this texture multiply or added or subtracted to another texture, and all the kind of fun that I leave to the people who are into that kind of things. But in general, you want to use this option here to mix colors together with your image map and create all kind of effects. A lot of fun. Every single channel here has that feature. So here is our specular channel. Here we have our modifiers. So we have our bump map. And here in modifiers, we also have a very, very powerful new feature, which is called the light emission. So let's say, for example, I want to go to my iris. And yes, I want to give to this figure glowing eyes. So I can just click on light emission, and now this material that is just a normal material, normal glossy material, will also emit light, and you can see it here in this column called emitter. Reality tells us, hey, be careful, this material is emitting light, in case I need to find quickly where are those glowing eyes and which figure has and which material is involved. I can just look at the list right here. So very, very, very simple stuff. The rest, I'll let you discover this on your own. There is a newly expanded Reality Users Guide. It's been revised to include all these parameters. Please take a look. You can find the Reality Users Guide here from the Help menu. And of course, the important thing here is that Reality now, it's an application. It's not just a plugin. It's an application that runs on its own. So I can go back and forth between Reality and Studio, and I can work in Studio. I can do all my work here, and Reality is always available, is always ready. It's not blocking anymore, while retaining all the goodness of the user interface, where you have all your parameters here, all the materials here, all your lights here, all your camera information, etc., etc., etc. We have more things, including volumes for creating effects like fog and so on. But this is just a quick walkthrough to let you find the new elements where they are and see how you interact with those new elements. There is a lot to be discovered in the texture department. We have very powerful features. We have, for example, let me just add a sphere to this scene. Okay, I'm not going to do anything with that in Studio. I'm going to just change the sphere in Reality, and it's right here. So, for example, here I can change this texture to create some sort of a marble effect. How do I do that? Well, I can simply create a mix texture. Mixing basically two colors together. And here I have my two colors, texture A, texture B. They can be anything. I'm going to use solid colors here for simplicity, but you know, they can be full-blown textures of their own at any level. So I'm going to just set an off-white here. And in the other color here, I'm going to use, actually, let me just go back. I'm going to set this to be black. Okay, here you see that change. And this is already in the right color. And here in the mixer texture, I'm going to create a new texture called marble. And look what happened here in the preview. We already have marble. And here we have so many parameters. So much fun to have here. You can change your type of, let's see, noise hard. See how it changes. We have the preview of the procedural textures. You can assign this to anything. You can have so much expression here. And it's all point and click. There are no nodes to connect, nothing of that confusion. It's all very, very, very simple. You just need to get familiar with it. But this is all available right now in Reality 4. You can experiment with this. The possibilities are incredible. So I hope you liked this overview of Reality 4. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.